Welcome to Close Reactions of the Third Kind, where I react to someone else's reaction to someone else's video. You may find it confusing, but you'll get used to it. So let's go.
So ladies and gentlemen, here in the UK, we are having a little bit of a heat wave at the minute. It's a bit warm. It's currently, I don't know if you can see that, 22 degrees. And I know what you're thinking. Adam, it ain't that warm. But here in the UK, when we get the slightest bit of warm weather, we all act like we've never been warm before. To me, it's piping. I went for a run yesterday, man, and it was hard. But we're going to be checking out, comparing British and American hot weather. Now, I'm going to Florida in just under 2 months, man, in the middle of July. And I'm probably going to melt, so this is probably one of the last videos you'll ever see of me.
I'm melting! Melting! Oh, what a world! What a world!
Adam, we all know you're not too bright, but there's no reason to brag about being dumb. Florida in July? Sheesh.
One of those memos pertains to heat waves.
Well, yeah.
Both countries have experienced their fair share of them over the centuries.
Yes, we have.
As someone who orbited the sun 26 times while living in Britain, I vaguely recall some of my homelands. I say vaguely because the thing about heat waves is that they don't linger in the memory like a blizzard or a hurricane. They don't yield shaky YouTube videos or Michael Bay set pieces. They're just a period of perspirational misery.
That's a good point. What is the weather like whenever it's warm where you live, guys? Because I just want to know what I'm dealing with here, man. Because I'm coming on here and saying 22 degrees is almost unbearable. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. No idea. Maybe like 70? I actually don't know. I have no idea. But let me know. You're probably laughing at me right now saying, Adam, you lot are pitiful.
You're right. We are laughing at you. But I'm not going to say pitiful. I'm going to say painfully unaware of the world around you.
In 2006, Britain experienced its hottest ever July, with the thermometer soaring to what I thought was a quite ridiculous 99 degrees Fahrenheit. One night, my wife and I camped out in my brother's living room in
Lawrence, is this you? I think this is you, Lawrence. Look at this hair, man.
London. What happened next was a lesson in why you should never sleep on a blow-up mattress atop a flat in 99-degree heat in a country where AC is fiction.
Oh.
Rumour has it that our sweat still haunts the ceiling. But what is a heat wave? A heat wave is not just a case of hot weather. If it was, the southern US would be embroiled in perpetual summer heat wave, with temps often reaching what on earth degrees Fahrenheit. No, a heat wave is a period of heat relative to the usual temperature of a place or season. So when measurements exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Britain, as they did in Cambridge last year, it's definitely a heat wave. Okay. And I know that because this has only happened twice in the nation's history.
Doesn't humidity make a big difference though? Obviously you guys got the humid. Well, not everywhere in the US has humidity, but like your Floridas, for example, have humidity. And then Las Vegas don't. It's dry as all hell out there, man. Right? Isn't that how that works? I've been to both. I've experienced both. But I've never experienced July. I've always went to Florida or Las Vegas either in February or in like October, I believe. Can't remember. I think it was like October. Yeah. But I feel like this is going to be a different kettle of fish this year.
Amazing. You actually got it right. If you want a simple example, imagine both Miami and Las Vegas at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Miami has a humidity of around 70% and Las Vegas about 20%. So Miami feels like about 122 degrees, and Las Vegas, it's still about 95.
In parts of the US, it's an annual tradition and will only become more frequent this century.
Yep.
Even while living toward the Great Lakes, I've encountered the dreaded 3 digits more than once.
Was he wearing a helmet?
Between this and America's extreme winters, there's a reason I miss British weather. After all, British heat waves ain't got nothing on America. If you don't believe me, let's take a look at a selection of America's greatest heats.
1896.
While not the hottest, this heat wave is notable for its persistence. In July and August of 1896, it impacted several popular cities such as New York, Boston, and Chicago over a period of 10 days. That's 24 hours longer than Michelle Phillips was married to Dennis Hopper.
Actually, 48 hours, but that's not important.
During those 10 days, the temperatures in those cities remained above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, even at night. Worse still, the humidity was about 90%, and this was in the days before aircon and Ben & Jerry's Chunky Monkey. Before entering into a bet with William Howard Taft over who could rock the best presidential facial hair, Teddy Roosevelt was New York City Police Commissioner. During the heatwave, he dished out ice creams to residents, which leads me to think he might have missed his true calling in life. To my mind, the world was truly robbed of mustachio-flavored ice cream.
Yes, he was president later. But you would need to know a lot more about American history than you are capable of learning to know why this is funny.
Just as 2020 feels like a runaway train that's devoured 12 bottles of Dennis Hopper,
Yo, doesn't it though? 2020 is obviously a massive year in history. For the obvious. How is it nearly 7 years ago? We're going to be dead before we know it, man. Not to get morbid.
1936 felt the same way, but in black and white. America was in the throes of its worst ever depression. The Dust Bowl continued to engulf the Great Plains, and the nation endured one of its worst heat waves in modern history. The year...
What is this? What is that?
Again, you would need to know a lot more about American history. Try this. Pause the video. Open your web browser and type www.google.com/search Q = dust plus bowl. Press enter. You now know what is that, and it only took about 30 seconds.
That looks absolutely horrifying. And then, oh my god, he'd kills 100 people. Wait, he'd kills 100 twin Scythians? What's that mean? What is this? Twin Scythians? I don't know what that means.
I'm tired of repeating this, but you really need to know a lot more about America than you do. Lawrence obviously intends this video for an American audience who understand the historical references. Note the newspaper banner says St. Paul Daily News. St. Paul is the capital of Minnesota. Minneapolis, the state's largest city, is on the opposite bank of the Mississippi River. Now, the two together are known as the Twin Cities. So obviously, any residents could be referred to as Twin Cityans.
Fearful toll here in 18 hours while entire nation continues to sizzle. Let me tell you something. As a human being, sizzling will never be good. If you find yourself sizzling you
can
might be
good.
trouble, man.
The year's one bright spark was when Olympian Jesse Owens stormed to 4 gold medals in front of German Chancellor and ardent snowflake Adolf Hitler. Man. But even as that was happening, temperatures in multiple states had exceeded 100 degrees for more than 10 consecutive days.
Jesus.
State records had to be rewritten.
I need to figure out what that is in my language, man, because I don't know what that is.
No. What you need is a little temperature conversion chart, like this one, to print out and set next to your computer. You will then never, ever, ever have to ask that question again. Look at all the time you'll save. In fact, I'll even leave it on the screen for you.
37 degrees Celsius. That is absolutely bonkers. For 10 consecutive days, no aircon, and also at night. Holy shit, I can't even imagine how bad that would be.
Today, 13 states have yet to best the records they set in the summer of 1936. This includes North Dakota, where temperatures soared to a high of 121 degrees. Nationwide, more than 5,000 Americans died due to the heat. Crop devastation was widespread, and it just happened to follow one of the coldest winters in US history. To this day, 2 states have yet to best the records they set in February 1936. This includes North Dakota, where temperatures plummeted to minus 60 degrees. 1936, kicking North Dakota's ass since 1936.
Jesus.
In the early 50s, Gene Kelly was singing In the Rain. This would have been a huge kick in the teeth to people in the central United States because a persistent and record-setting heatwave was wreaking havoc there. Some areas experienced worse drought than during the Dust Bowl. In 1954, the year of Dennis Hopper's first television appearance, 11 states endured 22 days of 100-plus weather, and the Super Soaker 50 was still the stuff of a madman.
22 days of weather over 100. How did anyone survive that? That is... I'm sitting here complaining about 22.
In July of that year, my current state of Illinois recorded its highest ever temperature, with the thermometer reaching 117 degrees in East St. Louis. Rumour has it that microbes are still hiding under Eads Bridge to this day.
Jeez. 1964.
This is our actual heatwave. Right? This is a Motown hit by Martha and the Vandellas. Yeah, it's a great song, but we don't have the rights to it. Can we skip to 88? Thanks. In America, 1988 is remembered less for its heat wave and more for the droughts it exacerbated. It's also remembered by me for an unusual lack of Dennis Hopper films and the line, "Senator, you're no Jack Nicholson." I think I dreamt that one. But the weather that year was no laughing matter. Weather stations recorded an unprecedented number of days between precipitation in many parts of the Midwest. In the spring, Milwaukee endured 55 days without rain or snow, a phenomenal feat for anyone who's been to Milwaukee.
Why?
At its worst, the drought...
Why is that so important? Why is 55 days without snow or rain so important for Milwaukee, in particular, and specified? Oof.
It's not just Milwaukee. Now, you may not be aware, but human beings need water to survive.
Extreme drought? Oh my god. What the hell going on down here, man? Why have we got extreme drought down here? Flippin' hell, man.
Almost half the nation, forest fires ran rampant, most notably at Yellowstone National Park, which suffered the largest in its history. The event led to one of the worst dust migrations since the 30s, and schools were forced to close in Dakota of the southern variety. Now, this is all terrible, you're probably thinking, but aren't droughts and heat waves two different things? Well, yeah, it's just that this particular drought happened to coincide with one of the most stunning heat waves since 1936. It's estimated that between 4 and 17,000 Americans died as a result.
So how many?
Coincide with one of the most stunning heat waves since 1936. It's estimated that between 4 and 17,000 Americans died as a result. Adjusted for inflation, it's the third costliest now.
4 and 17,000. Why such a big gap? Why is there such a massive discrepancy in how many people die, man?
Well, it depends on who's doing the counting, who's doing the reporting, where they got their data, what period of time they were covering. Now, some sources only counted deaths directly attributed to the heat, and others counted indirect causes. Who knows what that means? 4,000 to 17,000 does seem a bit extreme, but numbers I've found suggest 5,000 to 10,000 might actually be reasonable.
Natural disaster in US history behind Hurricanes Katrina and Harvey.
Jesus. Oh God.
In many ways, I've lived two lives, one in Britain and one in America, and a third one in an alternate universe where I have marginally better teeth and go by the name of Emma, but we don't talk about that. The 2016 Southwest heatwave is the only one included on this list to have occurred during my second life as a US resident. The good thing was, it was 2,000 miles away. During the month of June, temperatures in the states of California, Arizona, and Nevada looked more like supercentenarian statistics. You had numbers like 110, my age in Time Lord years, all the way up to 125.
Jesus.
That measurement was taken in Needles, California, a place that has literally never been hotter. Of course, California knows a thing or two about heat waves. Not only is the state frequently riddled with droughts and wildfires, it's also home to the hottest recorded temperature the world has ever known. The year was 1913. The place, Death Valley. And this was not the beginning of a vampire novel.
1936.
On July 10th of that year, the temperature maxed out at 134 degrees.
50, I'm rounding that up to 57, man. Because in school, you round up. 57 degrees. I'm going to assume that nobody lived in this place.
It happened before. It will happen again. That's it for this episode. I hope you're enjoying the warm weather while remaining safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the difference between British and American hot weather. Yeah, you know what? That makes me feel better about the weather here, bro. Yeah, it's 22 degrees where I am right now, man. For us, that is hot, because we don't get it an awful lot, right? Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of days ago, you and me, we checked out how the summers are different between the US and the UK. Today we're going to be doing the opposite. Today we're going to be checking out the difference between, guess, the winters in the US and the UK. Hi, Lawrence.
Well, now, I can't quite remember, but it's very possible that I've talked about British and American winters before.
You have many times.
But when I talk about American winters, I very often focus on those of the Midwest, because that's where I live. But I was reading the other day that America has places outside of Illinois, and in that moment it occurred to me that the winters that I endure here in Chicago are not in fact the reality for millions of Americans. This is a massive country. How big? About the size of 40 UKs.
I know that's more data than your little brain can process. Just trust him.
40? 40? Bro, how many times can you fit Northern Ireland inside America, man? It must be about 1,000.
Well, actually, 695.
So, of course, it stands to reason that with all of that latitude, there's just going to be a greater variety of winter weather across the entire country.
Yep.
And because I may have given a false impression to my British viewers that the whole of America is one big tundra, I wanted to look at that variety and how it compares with Britain.
Okay.
You know, I've lived in the north of England, I've lived in the south of England, I've lived in Indiana, and I've lived in Illinois. And in each of those cases, there's a favourite pastime among the people at the very moment that we change the clocks ahead of the looming winter. And that's when people say, "Ooh, I can't believe how early it gets dark these days." That was my best impression of a Hoosier. And something I've learned between living in all of those places is that it all comes down to perspective. What do I mean by that? Well, everybody is saying the same thing, and yet from place to place there are wild differences in when the sun actually sets. To see what I mean by this, let's take a look at the shortest day of last year, December 21st. On December 21st, the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland experienced a sunset at Austin 3:16 p.m. But
that's not that far off as to what we get in Northern Ireland, man. Yeah, it'll be pitch black for 4 p.m. Easy.
For me, growing up in England, that's extreme. As far as the United Kingdom goes, the Orkney Islands are far north. But even so, in my hometown of Grimsby, it would get dark about 40 minutes earlier than it does here in Chicago. And then, of course, you have the east to west difference. So, for example, in the southwest of Britain, the sun sets about half an hour later than it does in Dover in the southeast. Luckily, that kind of thing is relatively easy to follow in Britain because it's all on one time zone. The United States, meanwhile, operates on 6. And this
6? That is...
Or 10. The 6 shown here, plus 1 for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, and 3 more for the extreme western Pacific territories.
Flipping. I don't think I'll ever be able to wrap my head around that. Pacific, so from Pacific at 3 p.m. when it's Pacific, it's 6 p.m. over in New York. When it's 3 p.m. in San Francisco, it's 6 p.m. in Washington. That's like... I can almost understand Hawaii. Because it's a different island inside the middle of the fucking ocean. But this is the same piece of land and the same country.
This has been very confusing for me because I've lived at the eastern side of the central time zone and the western side of the eastern time zone. And so on December 21st in Chicago, the sun completely set at 4:23. But in Indianapolis, where I previously lived, it set at 5:23. And you might be thinking, well, that makes sense. For every time zone from west to east, you add on an hour. But when it comes to sunsets and science, it's not that easy. If it was, Philadelphia wouldn't have got dark at 4:39. And this can be found across 6 different time zones. So if you're the sort of person who's looking to move to America, but you hate it when it gets dark early, pro tip, move to the westernmost point of any time zone.
All of this is interesting, but not actually concerned with the main topic here.
Of course, there are major caveats to that. If you're one of the millions of people who's got your heart set on the tropical paradise that is Barrow, Alaska,
now called by its native Inupiat name, if you think I'm going to even pretend to try to pronounce it, you're crazy.
You might be interested to learn about its December 21st sunset. It didn't have one. The town has been enveloped in darkness since my birthday. That was 2 months ago. Of course, much of Alaska is also an incredibly cold.
What? Has Alaska been dark for 2 months?
Only the northernmost portion above the Arctic Circle. But most of the rest does have very short nights during the winter. But they make up for it by having very long days during the summer.
Town has been enveloped in darkness since my birthday. That was 2 months ago.
60
of course,
days.
Much of Alaska is also an incredibly cold place.
Why
but
is it-
not everywhere can
that
say
happen?
the same thing. You know, when I was younger, I couldn't really imagine saying this, but I sort of miss British winters. By Chicago standards, they're not that bad. So let's take the month of
I was going to say no, you don't, but you probably do because this is about to get wild.
January as our example. Some of the lowest temperature averages you'll find in Britain are in the Scottish Highlands. And in the Scottish Highlands, in the month of January,
Cold as shit up there,
the
bro.
average is about minus 1 degree Celsius.
There you go, freezing.
For completists and my American audience, that's about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, as with all of these averages, it can be colder or warmer on given days, but that's the January average. Down in Cornwall, in the southwest of England, you're looking at about 43 degrees Fahrenheit. And so in January,
Not
Britain,
bad.
on the whole, averages between those two numbers.
That's not
But in
very-
America,
that's not
just
a
like
lot.
the land itself, those temperature ranges are so much bigger.
I can
So
imagine.
in Chicago, the January average is about 25 degrees, and for my British viewers, that's roughly minus 4 Celsius.
Oh my god, I need to listen to that again.
Are so much bigger. So in Chicago, the January average is about 25 degrees, and for my British viewers, that's roughly minus 4 Celsius.
That is cold as balls.
And Chicago, cold though it is by no means the coldest place in the US. In Minneapolis, they average about 12 degrees, which is minus 11 Celsius. In Bismarck, North Dakota, it's 9 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly minus 13 degrees Celsius. And then this one is just stupid. In Fairbanks, Alaska, the average in January is minus 11 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 24 Celsius.
How do people live there? I don't get it. How do you stroll to the store in minus 20? I know you're going to say you don't. What if I need to do something and it's minus 24 outside? I will take one deep breath and I will turn into a nice lolly. That's a bit cold, isn't it? Like there's cold and then there's cold. I feel like that one falls into the latter. Minus 24. How could you, what? That's one of those things where you pour water out of a bottle and it would just turn straight to ice, wouldn't it?
There is so much to unpack here. First and foremost, Alaskans have a saying. There's no such thing as inclement weather, only inadequate clothing. Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota have stolen that saying, but it's still true regardless. Now, there's a concept called layering that every man, woman, and child in the northern part of America is familiar with. I'm sure most people in Scotland, in northern England, and yes, even northern Ireland know about it. And of course, there are snowmobile suits. Now, that addresses almost all of these concerns. If you're dressed properly, you certainly can stroll down to the store. And if you're really a wuss, there's this marvelous invention called a car. Now, that's not cold enough to freeze water that quickly. Now, maybe if you spray a mist into the air, but not liquid water. And maybe if you wore a real shirt instead of your underwear, you'd be a lot warmer.
And those are the places, as I like to say, that are unfit for humans. But what if I told you there were parts of America that require not thick, heavy coats and stupid winter hats, but just a jumper and or sweater and some pants of some kind? I'm not suggesting people walk around in their underwear. Well, this is the reality in parts of Southern California, Southwest Arizona, South Texas, and New Orleans. And in all of those places, I imagine there are times when people can get away with just wearing a t-shirt. And again, pants
Was
as
that
well.
winter?
And in Miami, I almost guarantee it, because there they average January temperatures of 69 degrees. And to be clear, that is in Fahrenheit, otherwise it would look like the beginning of Terminator 2.
My
in
God.
Celsius, that's over 20 degrees. in January
Ja-
as an average. And so sometimes it'll go above that and people presumably head to the beaches. And while I'm on the verge of getting envious, I just then remember I don't like people. So the winter beaches here in Chicago are more my style. I don't have style. And crazily, that's not even the warmest average. In Honolulu, you're looking at 73 degrees. So where might you find British-like winter temperatures? Well, as ever, you're likely to encounter those in the coastal areas of the Pacific Northwest, but also in a vast part of the country that's sort of south of the Midwest, but north of the Deep South. Basically, the northern south. That made way more sense in my head. In other words, if you're looking for those same temperature ranges that we saw with the Scottish Highlands and Cornwall, then a decent comparison would be New York City, where it's 32 degrees, down to Atlanta, where it's 43. Oh, and speaking of Atlanta, that brings us on to this.
Damn.
One of the most prominent features of winter, of course, is snow. And you might be thinking, what relationship does Atlanta have with snow? More on that in a minute. But Britain, where I'm from, does get snow.
Not really.
Usually, and disappointingly, not quite enough snow to make a snowman.
No,
though there
never.
have definitely been exceptions over the years, especially in Scotland, where they see more than the UK average. But for the most part, it doesn't often get bad enough that you'll see somebody wearing this. Of course, in Chicago, where it snowed in fact today, it's absolutely crucial. But there are some places in the US, including upstate New York, that get even more snow than Chicago. And don't just take my word for it. Here's me from 2 years ago. But funnily enough, New York City and just sort of downstate New York in general doesn't actually get snow on the level that you see in the rest of the northeast of the United States that we touched on.
Anytime I say snow, it always seems to be in New York, though. And it seems to be a shitload of it. Like, it doesn't just sprinkle of snow in New York. It covers the fucking place.
You mean New York City or New York State? There's a world of difference.
Here in this very video, the heavy load is actually carried by upstate New York. It gets a ton of snow, and it's all down to lake effect weather. So the likes of Buffalo and Rochester, they get nearly 100 inches of snow. That is mental, but it's not as mental as the city of Syracuse, which gets 123.8 inches a year on average. That's mental. It's also, for that reason, the snowiest city in the lower 48 of the United States. And I know what you're thinking.
100 inches of snow.
Syracuse of being the worst.
Wild.
You didn't think that. I just like wordplay. Indeed, in that video, where inexplicably I speak really fast and with a posher accent, I cover 6 other states that get way more snow than Britain. I'll link to that one at the end.
I'd like to point out here that how cold it gets and how much snow you get do not always correlate. The snowiest locations are not the coldest, and the coldest are not the snowiest.
But once you get south of the Mason-Dixon line, snow becomes more of a rarity.
The Mason-Dixon line is the southern border of Pennsylvania, latitude 39.43 degrees, halfway between Chicago and Las Vegas.
So Atlanta, which doesn't typically see a lot of snow, and because of that isn't as prepared for it as, say, Chicago.
Hold on, I want to say this again. Annual average snowfall in inches. Do any of you guys live in these places? And do you get a lot of it? Let me know.
More of a rarity. So Atlanta, which doesn't typically see a lot of snow and because of that isn't as prepared for it as, say, Chicago, closed schools and declared a state of emergency amid 4 inches of snow and temperatures that were in the 20s.
Jesus.
Remember, temperatures like that are extremely low for Atlanta, which in January on average is about 15 to 20 degrees warmer than Chicago. But it ain't got nothing on Miami, where snow is incredibly rare. Miami has issued 0 reports of snow flurries since 1977.
What?
Star Wars hadn't come out yet, Charlie Chaplin was still alive, and John Cena wasn't yet. Other honourable mentions among the low snow brigade include the Deep South.
It hasn't snowed in Miami since 1979.
He said 1977. Pay attention.
Huh?
Southwest Arizona and the West Coast. Other than that, America is pretty snowy, so wrap up warm and get yourself a shovel.
I feel the titles of these 2 videos are a little misleading. They both suggest a comparison between US and UK weather. In reality, they focus almost exclusively on the US, with only occasional mention of the UK. I suppose that's because the US has amazing extremes of weather, while the UK's weather is rather bland. not much beyond gloomy skies and almost constant drizzle. But that's not entirely true and totally unfair. For example, London has more days per month with some rain than Chicago, but more water falls in Chicago during those days. You can compare statistics between two specific cities at specified times, but you can't make blanket statements. That's about all I have for today. I'll go see if there's something else worth commenting on. Thanks for watching, wear appropriate clothing, and have a pleasant day.